the English touring opera. It has dropped 14 white musicians because they're too white. It's a drive to increase diversity. Many of them have worked for the English touring opera for 20 years or more, and they've been told their services will no longer be required because the English touring opera is committed to diversity, and they're prioritising diversity. Seems to me what they ought to prioritise is the music. Let's talk to social commentator Emma Webb. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Kevin.
Your thoughts on what I think this is just ridiculous. I mean, these are loyal musicians who've worked for this esteemed touring company. It reaches 50,000 fans a year going around the country, stages peerless productions, and suddenly what they say their priority is not the music, it's diversity. Diversity is becoming the scourge of this country, isn't it?
This is so deeply wrong. The Arts Council that actually funds the English touring opera, almost £2 million a year, has even said that when the English touring opera said that they've done this because they're following the diversity guidance from the Arts Council have said, well, we didn't tell you to fire people. The Musicians Union is also in uproar about this because it's so blatantly wrong. These artists are musicians, they are freelancers, so they can be dropped from tour to tour. But some of these people who are between the ages of 40 and 66 have been working with the orchestra for the last 20 years. They expect to be on the next tour. They have been loyal to the company for literally decades. And the reason why they've been dropped, as was stated by the director of the company in a letter to them, is because of diversity. And now they say that, they've dropped 14 of these musicians. They say that they've hired another 12. It's unclear whether or not the people that they've hired are from an ethnic minority background. I presume because of the letter that will be the case. But it's just obviously wrong to choose not to renew someone's contract or to not allow them to perform with the orchestra on the basis of whether or not they fit in a certain identity category. That is purely and squarely discrimination.
The English touring opera director James Conway wrote that the opera would quotes prioritise increased diversity in the orchestra. So there's no doubt what's going on here. I would suggest that what this orchestra is doing is racist.
I think it is racist to choose to not allow these individuals to perform because they don't fit within this vision of diversity, presumably because they are old and they're white, even though these are extremely accomplished musicians. The English touring opera is known for its fantastic quality music. And they've said that they'll call on these musicians potentially for future tours. If I were one of these musicians, I would feel like this was a real kick in the teeth after years of loyalty to be told I'm not allowed to perform because I am in a certain identity category. I think most people would rightly think that that is racist and it's discrimination. But it's actually not surprising because I think we've seen a scourge of this sort of thinking throughout classical music, throughout opera over the last couple of years. Talk about opera being white supremacist, about it being racist, about it being too Eurocentric. And, if you remember when the British Library were even talking about moving busts of figures like Mendelssohn and Beethoven after the Black Lives Matter protests, because they felt that those were somehow symbolic of white supremacy as well. So it's something that it's a way of thinking that seems to have infested the industry. And I think that this is a real shame because, as you say, they're prioritizing this push for diversity over the music. Their focus should be the music. That doesn't mean that they can't hire diverse staff, but as the Arts Council has made it clear, you don't fire people to achieve diversity. That's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, they should just hire the best musicians, regardless of the colour of their skin or their backgrounds. It's as simple as that. But it's not just diversity infesting the music industry, the opera industry. It's infesting the entire country. It has become the scourge of this country. Look at the BBC spending £100 million on it, and everybody goes, well, it's diversity, isn't it? Well, What are we going to do about this, Emma? We've got to get rid of this nonsense. You have government departments in the Ministry of Defence. There are more than 50 people with the words diversity and inclusion in their job titles. What do these people do except fire people because they're white? It's a disgrace.
But even the NHS, the public sector, paying people for diversity inclusion roles to the tune of, three figures, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year being spent on this sort of thing. But it is something that it's really taken over our entire sort of culture, all of our cultural institutions. We've seen this, in our museums. We've seen it in our theatres, everywhere. Even the rewriting of.
Take your time. Turn the phone off.
One moment. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Even the decision to rewrite the end of the musical Carousel, to as opposed to make it conform with current standards of morality and diversity. We've seen this in all of our cultural institutions, and we've had previously Oliver Dowden. Now we'll have Nadine Dorris in the role of Culture Secretary. Hopefully the government can help to push back against this, but ultimately the problem is that our institutions are being run by people who are supposed to be the caretakers of our culture, but actually they seem to loathe our heritage, and that should be very worrying to us, because when some of these things are lost, it's very, very difficult to rebuild them again.
I agree, and the problem with relying on the government does say it's going to push back against all this extreme wokery, which includes this obsession with diversity. The problem with relying on the government is is paying for hundreds of these diversity officers all over the civil service. So you've got the BBC infested with them, the NHS, which always moans about not having enough money, is constantly advertising for £70,000 a year diversity and inclusion officers. I don't even know what these people do except make people's lives a misery if they happen to be white. Everybody who's white in these organisations feels threatened. Something's got to be done about this. It is now turning, the whole country is kind of being ruined and run by the diversity Taliban, and we've got to stop it. Emma, you better find out who that was on your phone. Thank you so much for your time and your excellent contribution as always. Emma Webb there, social commentator. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and this is Talk Radio.